goods were hard to get during the Great Depression?
In my memory, nothing was hard to get if you had the money. But mostly the people couldn't afford to buy a lot of stuff.
What was the hardest thing to deal with during the Depression?
In my memory, the hardest thing was when we didn't have enough food.
What were some of the stories that you remember from the Great Depression?
Well, the people in our neighborhood, because they had no money for amusements, every evening in the nice weather they sit on the steps and they told their own stories. And the thing that always amused me was they'd tell the same stories over and over. And I'd always think, gee, we heard that before. But they kept telling them because that's all they had.
What was transportation? What kind of transportation was available back then?
Well, I would say for most people in really hard times it was pedestrian. You walked. And it might be very far, but you walked. And if it wasn't possible to walk, the streetcars were 7 cents and children were 3 cents. So that was a big challenge to put that money out. So you walked as many places as you possibly could.
What was meal times like? What was served for dinner and breakfast?
Well, a lot of the times, my mother, when we really were hard up, my mother would get cornmeal, and for breakfast we'd have cornmeal mush. And then she would take it, she'd make a lot, and what was left over she'd put in a pan, and it would set. And then she would slice it, dredge it in flour, and then we would have that, we called it fried mush. We'd have that for lunch and dinner.
Do you remember any songs about the Great Depression?
Oh, one of my favorites, which people sang all the time. In fact, people sitting on the steps, when they got tired of telling stories, would sing. And one of the Depression songs that I remember was, oh, why don't you work like other men do? Now how can I work when there's no work to do? Hallelujah, I'm a bum. Hallelujah, bum again. Hallelujah, give us a handout to revive us again. And then to cheer them up, a lot of times they sang, roll out the barrel, we'll have a barrel of fun. Zing, boom, torero, we've got the blues on the run. That's all I remember now.
Do you remember what holidays were like Christmas or?
Well, one story I have at Christmas, my dad was already gone because my dad cracked up and he went to a mental hospital, and my mother was left with us. And she had not a Christmas tree, she didn't have any gifts for us, and not hardly any food. And it chanced that one of the neighbor ladies found out about it, and she came with her husband. They had no children, and they brought us a tree, and they brought us some candy, which we never would have had. And I think they brought us some other food, but I don't remember. I just mainly remember the candy because, whoa, candy.
What year did you go onto A?
Well, after my dad went to the hospital, my mother, much reluctant, went to the charity to ask for charity. And in those days, it was a terrible disgrace to be on charity. Even if you were on charity, you would not admit it because it was just too big of a disgrace. And you wouldn't go on until you were so desperate that you had no other option. So I think that was when I was about 5.
How did the final question? How did the depression affect family life?
Well, there wasn't really very much stuff. You didn't have really enough clothes or warm coats. A lot of times you had to stay in because you didn't have a coat in the winter. And sometimes we didn't have coal. We had a potbelly stove for warmth, and if we didn't have coal, we'd stay in our beds to stay warm. And sometimes the young men would go to the railroad tracks when the coal cars came through, and the men would go up on the coal cars and throw down coal, and the people there would bring their coal buckets and fill their buckets with coal so they could have some warmth. And well, one thing you didn't have we didn't even have a radio, we didn't have any TV or amusements in the home, so they played games. We always played games. We played Pussy in the Corner. My mother played right along with us. Pussy in the Corner, Blind Man's Buff, I can't remember the other thing. Well, we did play cards and we played checkers. That's all we had, cards and checkers. So in the evenings, that's what you did to be amused. But if you didn't have your lights on, you couldn't see very well. So you sometimes have a kerosene lamp and didn't throw much light. But it affected it in a lot of ways. And we had cold water flats, so you didn't have hot water. And but one thing, it wasn't like all gray, because as kids, as long as we had food, we really had a good time. We always played outside all the time, playing games outside with our friends. And I don't look back at it as like an unhappy time, except when we were hungry. We really did worry if you didn't get any food. But there were a lot of good times.
Final question. How is your life different today now that you've experienced that?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. As kids with no opportunities, and there were 5 of us, we had to hustle to make our way. And as soon as we could make any money at all, we went to do it. And my first job was in a drugstore, the local drugstore. And when I started, I got 15 cents an hour, and I worked 36 hours a week, and I was 13 years old. But that sounds like, whoa, that's not very much. But, all the kids in the neighborhood admired me because I got the job. And I got $5.50 a week, and I gave it to my mother, naturally, because to help the family. And she gave me 50 cents. I thought, 50 cents, I could buy myself a new blouse. I was so thrilled. I didn't think it was not enough money. Like, I look back now and say, how could he pay me so little and work me so long? And nowadays, that would be child abuse. But I was much admired, and I must have been strong because I did it, and I went to high school and did my homework and got everything done anyway.
Well, thank you very much for interviewing.
You're welcome.